had a complicated time with it. Hey y'all, it's Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today. And for this video, we are going to be doing my August wrap up. Alright, so before we get into anything bookish, y'all know the drill. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below, as well as tell me in the comments, what is the most forgettable book that you read in August? I am so excited. We are officially in the Burr months. I can't wait. This is the best time of year. I already did my end of year reading tag earlier this week, and it has me so excited to head into fall time and all the autumnal reading. But of course, we have to officially close out August first, and overall, it was an okay reading month. I feel like I did pretty well when it came to the amount I was reading, but unfortunately, I feel like I had a lot of middling books, so it wasn't the best reading month rating-wise. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into my reading stats for August. I read 13 books, and across those, I read 4,689 pages. That does include converting audiobook hours to pages, but audiobook hours, I listened to over 69 hours. Don't do it. Don't do it. Nice. Like I was saying, my average rating for the month came out to 3.58 stars, which is rough. And then unfortunately, I did have 2 DNFs. Next, for my genre breakdown, I had a little bit of variety, but I did kind of stay within the same few genres this month. I read 2 fantasies, 3 horrors, 2 manga, 2 mystery, 1 nonfiction, and then 3 romance. As for the little goals I keep for myself, I did read a book that was more than 450 pages. I obviously did read a nonfiction book, and I did read a manga, so did pretty solid there. Then when it comes to my series stats, also pretty pleased with these. I continued on with 2 separate series, but I also attempted to start and made the decision that I will not continue with 3 other series. And then I also did really great when it came to reading off of my owned TBR. Of the 13 books I read this month, 7 of them came from my shelves. As per usual with my wrap-ups, I'm only going to do a full review of books that I have not talked about in specific dedicated reading vlogs. I had a lot of reading vlogs come out this month, including a Raid My Shelves Finding New Favorites. I had a author taste test, and then I had a ARC reading vlog come out. So if you're interested in reviews for any of those books, go check those videos out. I will have them all linked in the description down below. This month, I am going to be ordering these from the lowest rated books I read to the highest rated. So with the books that I DNF'd, I unfortunately did not finish The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker, which I read as a part of a author taste test, as I mentioned, so I'll put a link to that in the cards up above. And then on the opposite side, I also did not finish The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. This is for a Raid My Shelves that'll hopefully be coming out in October. These next 2 technically came out to the same rating based on my pile breakdown, but I think actually this one is probably lower. So next up, I read A Botanical Daughter by Noah Medlock. This was my Geek Squad book club pick of the month, and it is probably the first one that was a real letdown, unfortunately. In this one, we are following 2 scientists. One is a taxidermist and the other is a botanist. They are in a secret queer relationship, living in this manor in the English countryside. Well, the botanist ends up receiving a new species of mushroom that is really smart for a mushroom and starts to do different experiments with it to see just how far it'll go to survive and how it can overtake things around it to ensure its own survival as well. And ends up, along with the help of his partner, to create sort of their botanical daughter. Unfortunately, they end up using the body of a woman who has passed recently under suspicious circumstances, who just so happens to be the best friend of their new housekeeper. And so that puts the 3 of them in this complicated situation. I really wanted to like this. I mean, it's a Frankenstein retelling. It's got queer themes in it, but unfortunately, this did just kind of fall down for me. I think the setup was very much up my alley, but I didn't really love the execution. A large part of that came down to pacing. Sometimes it felt really fast in the first section of the book. It seemed like we were going at a breakneck speed, but then it dropped so drastically and it felt like we were really slogging through. I also just had a difficult time getting invested into the characters and the relationships that they had. I didn't particularly like the 2 scientists. Their relationship felt rather toxic at times. And then on top of that, I wasn't really sure what the plot was doing for like 75% of the book, which meant I never knew what to expect or where we were going. So whenever the pacing really started to drag, it was even more difficult for me to stay invested because I didn't know what was going on with the plot either. I wish that the buildup of them creating this botanical daughter had gone a bit slower, and then I also wish the characterization of the two men was a little bit more established, but also consistent. I liked the writing itself, but I almost feel like the author spent so much time creating this gothic, flowery atmosphere that some of that page time really could have been utilized to, again, build out the characters, improve upon the plot, strengthen the relationships, or explore the themes that were being presented more. There were a lot of elements of this book that I should have enjoyed, and the themes that were presented were also intriguing, but by the end of it, I just didn't really feel satisfied with anything that happened here. If you're interested in a little bit deeper thoughts or some ranting, I do have a spoilery reading vlog of this up on my Patreon that goes through pretty much my entire reading experience with it, and unfortunately the strong start and disappointing end. So I'll have a link to my Patreon in the description down below if you're intrigued. But in the end, this one turned out to be a 3-star. I am very bummed. I really like this cover, and I'm still going back and forth on whether or not I'm going to keep it on my shelves because I don't really think I would ever reread this, honestly, but I really like this cover. Next one I read as a part of Jan Agaton's Full Moon Book Club in August, the Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Finally got around to reading this one, and it is also going to be for that Raid My Shelves that'll, like I said, hopefully be coming out in October. This one also was a 3-star. Speaking of Jan, she also hosts a challenge over on her Patreon called the Coffin Covers Challenge, where she gives us an item and we have to find a book to read that has that item on the cover. This month's was a cat, and so I used this opportunity to pick up from my own shelves A Love Catastrophe by Helena Hunting. I got a copy of this from a family friend and she said she enjoyed it, so I was like, okay, you know, I'll try it. I've heard good things about Helena Hunting. Let's see how this goes. It was definitely an entertaining time. So in this, we are following Kitty, who is a cat whisperer. She owns her own company, house sitting and taking care of cats, training them, helping owners to train them, and then also has a social media presence as this cat whisperer. Well, she ends up getting hired by Miles, whose mother has recently been admitted into a hospital and diagnosed with dementia. So there are some heavier themes going on in this, but she has a pet Sphynx cat who absolutely detests Miles, and he's not particularly fond of the cat either. Because of that, they do not start off on a great foot, but Kitty really bonds with the cat and slowly starts to see that Miles is not a bad guy and tries to improve the relationship between the two of them. Like I said, this was cute. It was a funny, goofy time, but I think kind of part of my problem with it is it's so kitschy and quirky and goofy that I kind of had a hard time taking it seriously. I wasn't seeing these characters in the story as adults, which meant whenever we started to get into the romance and like spice started to be involved, I kind of got the ick. It was also kind of odd going back and forth between having these like really immature cat jokes and then jumping back to these very heavy topics of like each of their traumas, losing family members, a mother suffering from dementia, that sort of stuff. It just caused the tone to be really bipolar at times. As somebody who seriously considered adopting a Sphynx and has done a lot of research into them, there's just certain elements that started to bug me because they weren't being acknowledged as something that needs to be taken care of. For example, Sphynx cats obviously do not have fur. They don't really have a ton of dander, which is why they can be hypoallergenic, but they do still produce dander. And because of that, their skin can be really high maintenance. You have to give them baths or wipe downs, you gotta help clean out their ears, under their nails. None of that stuff was acknowledged at any point, which some people probably would not care about, but it was something in the back of my head that started to bug me. I was also gonna give this some flack because at one point, Miles has an allergic reaction, and it initially seems like it is supposed to be to the cat, and it is so extreme, unsure if that was even possible to have a allergic reaction of that extent to a Sphynx cat. It ended up being revealed it wasn't the cat that caused it. So I was glad that that got acknowledged and kind of worked out because it was definitely gonna bug me, someone who was also very allergic to cats, and I've never had a reaction that severe, and I've had some pretty bad ones over the years. So in the end, this was a cute, fun enough time to keep my attention. I basically blasted through the audiobook one day at work, but it's not a new favorite. I'm not going to keep it on my shelves. I think it's going to be a really entertaining read for anybody who loves cats. So with that, this one also came out to being a 3-star. Actually, this kind of works out perfectly. These next two sort of go together because they are both going to be in a horror specific reading vlog I have coming out in September. First one is Where the Dead Brides Gather by Nuzo Ono, and then The Unworthy by Agustina Bastarrica. I liked both of these, but I also had a fair amount of issues with both of them. So this one came out to 3 stars. This one is like, it's a 3-star, but it is just shy of a 3.5. Next book is American Sherlock by Kate Winkler Dawson. I read this as a part of Jan Agaton's Full Moon Readathon. I'm just talking about Jan a lot this month apparently. So I do have a reading vlog of that one, and I'll put a link to that in the cards if you're intrigued. I'm fairly certain I took this copy from my dad who read it, and it focuses on the man who is kind of lauded as the father of modern forensics. And it focuses on a few of his different cases, diving into the forensics that he spearheaded and then were able to utilize as evidence. As a true crime fan and somebody who's been watching CSI since I was like 8, yeah, this was right up my alley, and it was really interesting. I really liked what I did learn about forensics here, but I think the way the story was set up was kind of the biggest hindrance for me. I didn't love the way the author would set up each of the cases and then deep dive into them with a lot of information that didn't necessarily seem needed, especially when some of that time really could have been diving more into the forensics tests that were being discussed. Anytime things rounded back to the man himself, Heinrich, it felt like it was really repetitive and reinforcing this ongoing issue he had with money. Everything in his life always seemed to come back to money, and just it got frustrating to read about because I didn't care anymore. I wanted to learn something else about him. As I said though, I did appreciate what was here when it came to the forensics. I wish we would have dived a little bit deeper into them. I did like how Dawson discussed that some of these tests aren't really acknowledged as actual science anymore, how some can still be used, but they have to be corroborating evidence. All that kind of stuff was also very interesting, and again, made me wish that we had a little bit more around the forensics elements. All in all, it was an interesting read. I did come away with a few nuggets of information that were very cool, and I also would be willing to try something else by this author. I might be a little hesitant, and it really would probably depend on what the topic is. So in the end, this one came out to a 3.5 star. My other 3.5 star was The Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. I also read this one as a part of the Full Moon Readathon, and I had a complicated time with it. Next one is actually the last book that I read in August. It was supposed to be on my September TBR, but ended up diving into it a little bit early, and that was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I will be talking about that one in a 5-star author reading vlog in the future, but it turned out to be, I'm gonna say a 4-star for my graphic, but it's really more like a 3.75. I also had a complicated reading experience with it. Next up, I finally continued on with the Library Wars series by reading volume 10 by Yumi. So in this world, there is a breakdown in the governments around libraries. There are the people who try to enforce book bans and censorship from the national government, but the state government has libraries in order to protect these books and fight against censorship. And we follow this young woman who is on the library task force, and there is a ongoing dramatic romance with her boss. This one was a really fun continuation. It very much focused on the actual plot around the library wars between the national and states governments, which I was really excited about. There was also a few cute moments between the main character Kashihara and her boss Dojo, but my god, are we ever going to have a volume where she doesn't break down crying? This was 4 stars. Next 4-star I have is Shiver by Junji Ito. This is a collection of horror manga short stories. Also read this one for the Full Moon Readathon, and this will also be in that horror reading vlog coming out in September. Last of the books that I read for the Full Moon Readathon, I have Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This was a really popular horror lit fic that came out a few years ago. I felt like everybody was reading it and it was really divisive. So I finally got around to picking it up, seeing as how it was a slow-paced book, which was one of the prompts that we had. I did really like this. The writing in it is phenomenal. So we are alternating back and forth between this married couple, one of which went on a submarine expedition and ended up getting trapped in the submarine for 6 months. And so we see her perspective once they are trapped. And then on the opposite side, we follow her wife after she has returned home and is trying to continue their normal day-to-day lives in the wake of this traumatic experience. It was a rough, weird, emotional punch of a book. book. I mean, the writing is absolutely gorgeous. There's some truly stunning lines in here. It is definitely very slow. It's really meandering. And this is also one of those where like, I finished it and I don't know if I quite understood what happened at the end. I don't know if I necessarily liked it or not, but it was definitely memorable. It also just has this very oppressive and unsettling atmosphere, and it just makes you more uncomfortable the further into the book that you get. Okay, it sounds weird to say enjoyed. I think the author did a phenomenal job in how she presented grief and trauma and healing from that, how those elements can really impact a person, and also the relationships that they have with the people around them, how a person works through those experiences. All of that was so well done. I really liked how all of them came together in this story. I do think I probably would have liked a few more answers as to like the mystery of what's going on, but at the same time it feels like one of those books where that is not the focus. The focus is really on watching these characters processing what happened, and I think the lack of answers does kind of match with the beauty of the rest of the book. This one was a really strong 4-star. Don't know if I would necessarily reread this book at any point, but like some of the lines in this are definitely going to stick around in my head. They were just so good. And then finally, the last 2 books that I read for August are 2 arcs. So first one is It Had to Be Him by Adib Karam. I will actually have an arc reading vlog coming out for this one here soon, and I gave it 4 stars. Then on the other side is My Best Friend's Earl by Bethany Bennett, which came out in my prior arc reading vlog, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. All right, and on that note, that is officially it for today, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, let's leave the wave emoji in the comments. I have links to all of my socials as well as a few ways you can support me, including my Patreon down in the description. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Love you, bye!